The views, information, or opinions expressed during this series are solely those of the individuals involved, and do not necessarily represent those of the organizations they are affiliated with, and its employees. Let's get dialed in.
There will always be somebody stronger, faster, and smarter than you. Surviving depends on your adaptability to change. Those who are the most adaptable are dialed in. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. It's Tuesday, another Tech Tuesday, another good show for you guys with another great guest. Let me know where you guys are watching from. I already see Royce out there in the comments. What's up, Royce? We got to catch up later, sir. Say hello in the comments. Let's connect. The show today will be a great one talking about regulated privacy in 2021 as part of what we're going to talk about. But we have a guest, former past immediate president of ISACA Houston. Great conversation coming up here. So don't go anywhere. Stay tuned for that. And guys, just as a friendly reminder, coming up next week, I can't believe it's the time is flowing and it's already here. But next week, we have our big conference in Houston, Elevate IT, October 14th, 15th, 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. And as a part of my new company, Acuerdo, we have our pavilion in there, kind of at the center of it, Back to the Future of Work with myself and Frank Rogers, my co-founder. And this is how you guys can register for the show. The link is right here. Screenshot this. go.acuerdo.io/FOW for Future of Work. Go there and get a complimentary ticket, complimentary pass to the show. And don't miss out. We got about maybe an 8.5 hour live stream on that day coming out with just the goal is just jam-packed value around IT, security, and all that landscape. So let's bring up Harvey Nusz. So Harvey is most recently, I think this just happened, Harvey, right? You are most recently now the past president of ISACA Houston, and you've been with ISACA for many years. So let's bring out Harvey and get this show on the road. Hey, Harvey, welcome to the show.
Hey, Kyle. Long time no see. How are you?
Absolutely good. So, Harvey, let's get right into what the thing that you were the most dialed into, right? So on this show, we're talking about becoming the most adaptable to change, the most adaptable that we can be to change. And that's the thing that you're dialed into. What is that for you?
So it's been around privacy for about 5 years now. And we can get into it later. But as you've mentioned, I've given back to organizations for a long time, and ISACA probably the longest, back before it was called that. But about 5 years ago, I had just finished a contract up in Keller, just north of Fort Worth, helping a company on identity access management. And I figured I would be in that the rest of my life, basically. And instead, I got a call to see if I wanted to help somebody with GDPR. And I couldn't even spell GDPR at the time. And I'll tell you a little joke about that in just a minute. But I got with a friend of mine who I had helped before, and he had been with Shell for many years. And we spent an hour together on it. And I felt pretty briefed in GDPR. I talked with the lady with the firm. And Sharon said, yeah, you did good. We're going to have to talk next week, though, via Skype with my manager. I said, yeah, no problem. So they called me back about 3 days later and said, hey, you know Mark Johnson. I said, yeah, sure. Yeah, he's spoken for me a couple of times. Why? They said, well, he said, I know Harvey. Bring him in, give him $3 more an hour on the contract. And so I started that. And then shortly after that fall in October, Safe Harbor was invalidated by the EUCJ, European Union Court of Justice. And they just invalidated the successor to that, Privacy Shield, on July 16th of this year. And so they're now referring to that safe harbor invalidation as Schrems 1, because the last one was Schrems 2. And it affects the trade, a lot of trade coming across, even to the point that Ireland is telling Facebook not to send data, to the US from Ireland. So it's a huge thing. I started learning more about it. I started putting in to speak at conferences, and I've just been in it ever since. And thank you.
Wow, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, in all of that, like, what is what is in your purview, in your perspective? Like, what is what draws you to privacy? Obviously, there's a lot of changes going on there, right? You mentioned GDPR and all those things. Like, what's the thing that drives you to it?
So I didn't realize it probably until I'd been in it a couple of years, and I was with a panel with a guy from Germany, I believe at the time, and another person here in front of ISC Squared at one of their security congresses a few years ago. And it suddenly dawned on me, and I think others at the table, that the reason there's such a culture change between GDPR, privacy in Europe, and privacy here is because their privacy is a right. And you should not be able to, people should not know your ethnicity or your religion. And the reason behind all of this is because they've had a genocide. And we haven't recently. So I think it goes back just to the roots. And I think that is, so I believe that God put me in that job that day and in this field. And I think it's where I need to be. Now, let me just quickly segue and say a couple of years ago, I was up in Michigan around Grand Rapids, helping a pharmaceutical company adjust to GDPR. And a friend of mine was very happy to have brought me up there. He's with Experis, great guy. And Bill was saying to his friends, he was showing off his new knowledge of GDPR and what it was coming in, and people were going to have to understand it. And so somebody heard it a couple of times. They looked at him and said, Grand Rapids Police Department? So that's what I meant by not being able to spell GDPR.
Grand Rapids Police Department. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I mean, since we're on the topic, what in the most simplistic terms for people that don't know any better, like, so I mean, what is the deal with that? Like, what is the deal with GDPR, and why is that so important?
Well, it's around privacy is a right, and here privacy is not a right yet, and I think it will be soon. We have our many-paged EULAs that you sign or you don't get access. And I really think, I've heard this from a friend of mine last year, I really think it's going to take another law like Sarbanes Oxley geared to privacy. And what Sarbanes Oxley did was it brought in controls, but it also said, hey, there's prison sentences in case you don't do it right. And then it also placed financial expertise on the board, and this will be placing privacy expertise and cybersecurity expertise on a board, much like the FTC did with Facebook in their consent decree last year.
Wow. Okay. Got it. So, looking forward to like the privacy regulations of like potentially 2021 and beyond, right? You don't have a crystal ball or anything, but what are you predicting, or what are you projecting? I mean, obviously GDPR is huge in the EU, and we got the thing going on in California. I don't even know what it's called, but you can probably correct me on that. But like you said, it's not here in the United States yet, right? Like on a massive level. And is that in our future?
So I think it probably is. I think there's several companies that know they're under GDPR here in the US, and they're doing their best to meet it and to comply and to meet the spirit of the law. There are some other companies who I think probably believe they're under it, but maybe they can't get to me. I don't have presence over there, and maybe they aren't quite where they need to be with that. I think that is going to change. I think part of the issue is right now, we're obviously in a pandemic, and about the biggest concern we have about privacy is contact tracing. But other than that, we're just trying to survive and get the economy returning again, so we're not focusing on privacy. But I believe that we will next year as the economy returns. And to your point about CCPA, CCPA with California Consumer Privacy Act, it's not really GDPR. It's a little different, and it didn't quite have the impact that the creator McTaggart wanted. And so I believe he's behind a ballot issue to have CCPA 2.0. And I think it's called CPRA, where it's really going to have GDPR in a much more stringent manner. And so it's on the ballot, and I would argue it's probably going to pass in California. And if it does, then they're not going to be able to change the law. And that was initially done with CCPA last time, except McTaggart told the legislators, listen, I won't put it on there if you want to pass it and then change it. And so that's what happened. And it didn't quite, as I understand it, have quite the impact he wanted. So this is on the ballot. When it passes, I think it will. It'll probably, it's my understanding, being a pretty strong GDPR-like regulation, it may just spread across the states next year. So
Wow.
that's one possibility. And what's fascinating about it is, some people are very aware of Canada's law, PIPEDA. I'm not sure exactly how you pronounce it, PIPEDA. But if you look at this new law coming in, if it does come in, I believe it's going to be stronger than PIPEDA, which is largely based upon privacy by design and privacy principles, which is very good and which is the basis for any privacy framework. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Royce says states are introducing laws, and globally GDPR set off a waterfall. I mean, I think that's kind of fair to say, right? GDPR started this waterfall effect, and the effects are not even seen yet.
Absolutely right. No, absolutely right. And I saw a friend of mine sent me a publication by Gartner that is saying, I think by 2023, 65% of the people in the world are going to be under some sort of privacy law. Now, the fascinating part of that is it's not going to be harmonized. So they're all going to be saying different things. And so it's creating a lot of work for privacy professionals. I would argue that if you really twisted my arm, I'd say we don't have any privacy, but privacy is going to be a big business as we try to gain it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It will be. What do you say to, there's obviously the work from home thing. I call it living at work now, because that's we're living at work now instead of working from home. Same thing. But, obviously that's put a huge strain on privacy as well, because now maybe we're using a VPN, maybe we're not. Who knows, right? We're accessing all these things on the internet. Now our home networks are meshing in with our corporate networks, right? So there's a lot of concern there. And then, we're on these same networks with like Alexa and Siri and Hey Google, all these things, right? So, like,
You didn't get me started about Alexa.
This is a big loaded question, but what is the current state of things? I mean, it sounds like chaos to me, but like, what's the current state of things, and how do we even begin to make sense of this, right?
No, I like that. So thank you. So regarding, we could probably just work on that question for the rest of the time, but but working from home, it brings to mind that privacy is based on security. Security has to be there as the foundation. And we realized that. I was a part of all three workshops of the NIST development effort for the privacy framework. And we finally realized that, you've got to pivot to a framework first, like the security framework that they put out. Then you've got to put privacy on top of that. And with respect to Alexa, it is amazing. It is amazing of the innovation that you can have from that and how it's driving it with Alexa and all the Google-like products. You're seeing the commercials about cars, and the things that you can do. Your dog can jump up, throw the water dish under the sink, and you can say, Delta, fill it up. But there's a price to pay for that. Mm-hmm. And your privacy information, thanks to the ability to easily and cheaply store content, it's going to be around forever. And you really don't know who has access to it. And there have been some interesting cases with Alexa, I believe, and with Amazon. I believe there was even one case in GDPR where one newspaper sent into Amazon a request for information under GDPR about one person and got a reply back on another person.
Wow.
So, which kind of is a breach in and of itself.
Yeah, and there's the I forget the details, but there's an Amazon Alexa in court case that like they use it as evidence, right? So like that's going to happen more and more frequently. Yeah, but then like there's this deeper, more philosophical question at bay here, and that is, most let's be real. Most people don't even care about. They may say they care about privacy and security, but they really don't, because their actions kind of show otherwise, right? Because they're looking to remove friction in their life, and that's what Alexa does, and that's what these things do. It removes friction. So like there's this balance of like, I could remove all this friction, but I give up all this privacy and security, or I could have all this privacy and security and like I don't have a smartphone, I live off the grid, I'm relying on sun power, and like you can't get me, but like now I'm not even relevant in the world, right? So like there's a balance, right? And I guess everyone has to figure that out. But what's your take on that?
No, I think you're absolutely right. And right now, I think we have chosen to want to get ahead, and so we've chosen no privacy now. And I think a lot of it is in your perspective and perhaps a little bit in your age. It's my understanding from a friend of mine who teaches classes at a university, a 2-year university, actually a 4-year too. He's saying that he's trying to get his students to understand that, yes, it's convenient that Google knows all about you and they can populate things and make things happen quickly, but think about the price of that. Think about when you start looking, and others, when you start applying for jobs, looking and seeing what there is. Somebody told me about a documentary recently, and I'll get you the name of it.
Social Dilemma? The Social Dilemma?
Yes, that is. Thank you very much. I understand you look at that. And,
it's lighting the internet on fire right now on Netflix, right? So that's a hot topic.
Yeah, and what is a lot of the actions that come from that? Mm-hmm. They're getting off of social accounts.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. So yeah, there's a lot there. Now, I have some friends who've got an iPhone, and they'll just sit there. We'll be texting messages, and it takes them a lot longer to text with me because I take the easy way out, and I involve Siri, who I'm nicknaming Iris because she gets a lot of it backwards. But, I'm willing to take that chance just to, for productivity, as you had mentioned with the ballot.
Right. Yeah. But I noticed you're an iPhone guy, not an Android guy, so that there's a reason for that too.
Well, there probably is. I've always been intrigued about wanting to try the other, but I finally just given up on simplicity. So, and yet I'm not sure that I totally believe that Apple's got my back with respect to privacy. I don't quite believe that either, but I've been comfortable with the iPhone. Interesting observation. Thank you.
Absolutely. But if there's anybody, I mean, you gotta go choose the lesser or the greater in either respect, right? So pivoting back to I know we got a few more but halfway through here, but pivoting back to kind of your career and what it was like to kind of climb the ranks as you did in your giving back as the former president of ISACA, right? Like what was that like? And what was that journey like for you?
So that was the ISACA Houston chapter. So it was fascinating because I actually got involved with the chapter, going to the chapter, and actually had my name on the charter back in 1974. And the ISACA International says it's 75, but it was really 74. And if they can produce it and tell me differently, that's great. I'd love to see it anyway. But it was amazing because several guys had already done the work. There were 7 or 8 of them up there on the street corner in front of Shell as we were getting ready to go to the meeting. And I said, hey, put my name on there, would you? And they looked at me, it's kind of like, you haven't done any work. I said, I know, but I will. And so what's fascinating is I'm the only one that's still involved in the chapter from all of those who had done that. And so I there was a period of my life too. There was a period of my life where I actually chose to leave Texas, unlike most Texans, right? And move outside of Texas. And so I did so, and I was up in Rockford, Illinois, working for Sunstrand, then moved over to Milwaukee, working for the light company. And there, I actually co-founded the ISACA chapter there and became the second president. And I actually named it, and somebody had convinced me that if you want to get a good name for something, name it after an animal or something like that, or something. And so we called it the Kettle Moraine chapter, based upon an ice formation, a glacial ice formation. And I think they tried to change it later, and that's fine. But I was up there doing that, and I actually moved over to Salt Lake City, lived there a while, worked for Blue Cross Blue Shield, and actually then moved to Las Vegas, which I didn't even think it had a town when I interviewed, but it did. And I worked for the gas company, and have since moved back here. And it was fascinating when I came back here, interviewed for a position. The guy looked at me over his glasses and said, "Now tell me, son, why'd you ever leave Texas?" So I had to agree with him. But
Yeah.
it's been a good experience, because as I've traveled and consulted with companies, I can relate to people in different areas, based upon some of those experiences.
Oh yeah, absolutely. As someone who has not stayed put for longer than 5 years, I can relate to that. You get those different perspectives. I was in Dallas most recently for 4 years, and now here I am in Austin, still Texas, but it's different. So yeah, I can relate. So what would you say is like, you've done a lot in your career. Like, what would you say is like the number one thing that you wish you knew starting off then, that you know now that you wish you knew then?
Okay, no holds barred question, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I wish I knew about privacy more, but more than that, I wish I had known Christ a lot earlier in my life. I've given my life to Christ when I came back to Houston here in 1991, and it's made a tremendous difference. And so that is there. We've also talked before. Let me just segue really quickly, if I may. You were asking what I was passionate about, and it is privacy.
Mm-hmm.
And what I would like to do, and it's interesting, when we talked before, you described it as a moonshot. So I appreciate your
your moonshot idea. Yeah.
Yeah, appreciate your encouraging me to say that. So for some reason, I'm not sure why, but it would be my dream effort to be able to help President Trump with privacy, to get that installed across the country in whatever manner that is. Whether you can get it through legislation or in working with whomever to get it through other methods, through the states or whatever. I would just love to do that. So thank you.
No, that's incredible. And like I told you before, just a few moments ago, I don't know many people that can articulate like, this is my moonshot, and like for you to have that, that's incredible. Like, how did you come to that realization? Like, this is what I want to do. Like, you had the idea, and like, this is it. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to try to do, at least.
So the best I can, it's a good question. The best I can do to answer that is that I know that privacy is just in my blood now. That's what I want to do. And unlike some people, I have great respect for President Trump and his values and what he's doing in returning our country to our roots, in terms of, we were here because of God, and it's a good thing. And so it just kind of came together from there. And I even felt when he went into the hospital recently that he was going to be out within 2 weeks, and he is. And I just pray to God he doesn't have a relapse and he stays out and things go well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
absolutely,
does that help a little bit?
Yeah, that does. Yeah, I mean, as people out there who are watching this, like, they're looking to figure out their career and figure out what their purpose is and what their value is and what they're dialed into, how they remain adaptable to change, right? Like, that's always a thing that we're always fighting constantly, is like, how do we stay relevant? How do we get what we want? And how do we figure out what we want in the first place, right?
Exactly. Let me also, for some reason, I'm inclined to share now, Kyle, that one of my most exciting positions I had, it was only 8 months, but it was with NASA, Johnson Space Center out here. And I was working with the international partners. And we were, in NASA's terms, controlling the ground segment of the communication up to the space station. And I just enjoyed it. I was able to go to Canada and lead a bilateral security summit there, with the folks who were building the robotic arm for us.
Oh.
I had a chance to put on a 5-day conference, invite everyone here from the international partners, about continuing to learn in this space on security. And I was even able to go to Moscow and to participate in a bilateral summit there. And one of I think my most exhilarating experience was to have been in the Mir control room, Mir station space station control room. Granted, nobody else was in there at the time because it wasn't circling overhead, but it was fascinating to see that. And I another story that comes to mind just related to that is my mother-in-law at the time was really concerned when 6 months later that it was going to be brought down. And she said, "Oh, it's going to hit the country." And I said, "No, I don't think it is, B, because, granted, they don't have quite all the tools we have. We had some interesting experiences over there. They would do what they needed to do in terms of printing reports and then turning around the other side and running it through the printer again, but they were conserving." But I said, no, these guys know what they're doing, and they brought it down safely. And it was just fantastic to be able to relate to other people in other parts of the world like that.
Oh, that's an incredible experience. I mean, yeah, that's awesome. That's very awesome. Now, we're coming to the tail end of this thing here. I know we have a hard stop soon. Just a few more questions for you, if you don't mind. What would you say is the biggest surprise you've had during this whole pandemic, besides the obvious things that we've all seen, right? Like, what's the thing that was most surprising to you?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is everybody's got to make this decision themselves. But I've always respected New Hampshire, I believe it is, live free or die. And we all have to make the decision of, when do we go out? What do we do? And I was a little surprised that of the timidity there. And maybe I was reading it wrong. Maybe people were, making the right decisions. But if I could, as an analogy, I remember when I first became a believer in Christ, I was reading about the bubonic plague a long time ago, and I was reading that Christians would help carry the sick to hospitals. And I began, just being a new believer, I began thinking, like, why would they do that? And the answer is that they were moved by the Holy Spirit to do that. And probably in most cases, they were protected in doing so. So we've just got to, it's make our own decisions about what to do. And I think that was my biggest surprise. And also that we did turn to a lockdown so quickly. It's looking like other countries have made it without it. But, it is what it is. And I just hope and pray that it will be conquered and that people will recover from it, and that we will also reopen our economy very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely makes sense. What would you say is like the single best book or resource that you've ever consumed?
So I remember being asked if you had to go to it, if you were marooned on an island, what's the book or books you want, right?
Yep.
So again, just in total honesty, I have gotten the most from the Bible, from reading the Bible, from even just reading the Psalms, a couple of Psalms and a Proverbs a day. And I think that has really helped me to increase in wisdom and understanding. And the Psalms help me understand God better, and Proverbs help me relate to people better.
Absolutely. Well, cool. I appreciate you being on the show with us today, Harvey. What's one last piece of guidance that someone instilled on you that you'd like to part with here?
Oh gosh. Basically, I think give back, to those who have much is expected, and just be more of a giver than a taker, which I think a lot of people are.
Oh, well said. Well said. You heard it here, guys, from Harvey. Be a giver first before you're a taker. Appreciate it, Harvey. Thanks for being on the show.
God bless you. Thank you. Take care.
Everyone, take
Bye.
care.